Good afternoon, everybody. Today, we've heard a lot about the trends and the challenges that we all face as organizations. We're in a world of constant change, but we're also in a world of great opportunity. And what I'd like to talk to you today about is some of the key themes, 8 themes, that leading organizations have implemented to become leaders. And please be aware of that word, implemented. This isn't in their plan. This isn't an idea. It isn't a POC. They've implemented these changes in their organizations today. They're the organizations that are 4 years ahead. Now, when I introduce some of these themes, they will not be a surprise to you. More than likely, you will know all of them. The difference is these leaders have taken these ideas and implemented them with a focus and with an intensity. And that's why they've become leaders. Some of you in the room will be pushing for these types of changes within your organization. Some of you will be skeptical. So I'd ask you just to go to that rainforest room, that moment of Zen, as we talk about some of these themes, and just pause and reflect and ask yourself, are we driving these types of things into our organization with the intensity that's going to really make a difference? Or are we just skirting around the edges? So that is the challenge I lay out for you. So the first one I want to talk to is about how we're starting to redesign the whole organization relationship with customer and adopt what we call zero distance to customer. This is not just about changing the experience. This is about how you are reorganizing and restructuring your organization to push that closer decision making and that closer contact with customers deeper into your organization. Not just at the front, but all the way through, and rethinking about maybe how you restructure your organization to enable more autonomy and more closer relationships and decision makers with your customer. And that means driving autonomy. And that means starting to think about how you enable self-leadership in these organizational cells and how you equip people to be able to make those changes for themselves so they're driving that change. The second one we talked about, and I think we heard a lot about this in one of the talks this morning, but how are we going to be regenerative? How are we thinking about sustainability in our organization and the fact that actually none of you can do this on your own? Unless you start to partner, not just with organizations like us, but across your value chain, up and downstream, to actually work out how to solve some of these problems in a far more collaborative way, we will not solve the problems that we need to solve from a sustainability perspective. We have to think about how we adopt a more ecosystem view, how we start to cooperate, not just with innovators, but how maybe we cooperate with competitors and see competition in a completely different way. This is probably the biggest challenge we all face in society. What's interesting about these leaders is how they connect these themes together. They don't see these things as one isolated thing there, another initiative there. They're connecting all of these things because customers are interested in sustainability. They're interested in how we behave. And so, equally, when we think about our employees, and this was brought up, I think it was a great answer to the question of how do you motivate from Annette, is around how does purpose, right, and enter into our organization, and what does purpose really mean? That's not just coming out with a statement to say we now have a purpose statement. It's more than that. It's how we engage people, how people feel vested in the organization. How far will we go? Will we go to give them a slice of the company? Right? There are some organizations out there now that allow those autonomous business units not only to drive change, but actually to invest in their business, to actually attract investment from stakeholders and to benefit from the returns that their business cell is making within their organization. So they can feel the difference they're making. So how do we look at purpose? How do we look at humanity? How do we actually start to become more employee-centric in that whole process? Because we've been talking about customers for so long and customers first, and then you listen to somebody like Richard Branson who will say, well, actually, if you put the employee first and they're happy, if they're happy, then they'll look after the customers. When you look in the US, the surveys around employee satisfaction, are you happy with the company you work for? Or do you just turn up Monday waiting for Friday so you can live the weekend? And it's something like 75% of people are just waiting for the weekend. This isn't the way we're going to attract talent if your organization makes your employees feel like this. And organizations are tackling this challenge. If we think about taking that on again, and we think about diversity, and what does diversity mean to us all? Diversity is neural diversity. How do we bring different ideas from different people who have lived different experiences to change the way we work? And what does that mean to how we work as a team? Hybrid teams. What does hybrid team mean? It's not just business and IT people working together on a project, which has been tough enough to get together for a while. But real hybrid teams with diversity, with neural diversity, where you respect each other because of the ideas people have, not just because they're different. It's actually the value they bring to you that you've got to respect and understand, because then you start to operate as a team. That enables you and means you need to allow room for curiosity. Time. We live in such a busy time. Everybody is so focused on the operations, they don't have time to think. They don't have time to look at what's happening outside, to strategize, to come up with innovation. So how do we create time in the teams? How do we create the safe spaces that enable people to innovate and feel comfortable putting innovations on the table? It's these organizations that are going to attract the talent, where they can bring their ideas and their innovations, feel safe, have time to put those on the table, work on them in hybrid teams with different people's opinions to drive that change into our organization. Connectivity is really, really important, right? Because a long time we've had a battle between should we be centralized, should we be decentralized? If we be decentralized, we can't communicate with each other, we go backwards and forwards. All of the time missing the fact that actually, when did we invest in really good collaborative systems that enabled autonomous business units to actually co-op with each other and exchange ideas and information? So thinking about how we manage connections sometimes is more important than actually managing the end event. And leaders are really focused on understanding those connections. They understand the role of platforms and how platform business models are going to be important to them. And more importantly, how are they going to operate in that world? How are they going to drive trust, especially when you think of what we're doing where we start to expand across the value chain and we have to work with partners differently to drive sustainability, and we need to start to exchange data because of ESG, and now we need to trust each other a lot more. How are we going to operate in that world? And then how do we build technology? We've been building for scale for a long time, but the world is different now. Cloud and other technologies enable us to scale at a far lower cost. And we've got to start to rethink maybe what our IT operating model looks like, and actually how we build applications and microservices and how quickly we can deploy those. And actually, should those really be centralized at all, or should they be with the autonomous business units? And which bits should be where? And then I think probably the most important one is very much around what I call value in motion. We are becoming data-driven. But what does that mean? Well, it means working out what are the key decisions we've got to take as an organization. It means working out what types of insights and data do we need to support those decisions. We then have to think about actually how do we build that in a way which is resilient, right? A lot of AI initiatives go through extraordinary efforts to build a model and to validate a model. But trying to make that operational is really hard because you're not scrubbing the data every day. So there's a lot of work that needs to happen. And then where does automation play a role? Is it people automation? Is it people and machine? Is it machine? So how do we think about automation? How do we think about digital twins? How do we think about chaos engineering? We're in such an uncertain world today. We have to play a lot more scenarios. And the only way we're going to play scenarios is to start to engineer chaos scenarios, simulate them in digital twins to see how we might respond. So we build these muscles in our organization. I was speaking to a mining company in Canada, and we brought up this term chaos engineering, and he said, I want to know about that. This year, we've had 5 chaos events in our business. Events that have turned us upside down. Events that we went into panic. We didn't know how to deal with them, and we've had to work our way through it, and it was painful, and it killed us, and we're shattered and tired. We have to be better at understanding how to manage these unpredictable events, right? That's what Netflix does when it starts to introduce chaos events into their operating model just to see how their business is going to respond. I think earlier we talked about cybersecurity. What's really interesting is banks and insurance companies are now starting to simulate cyber attacks to see how their organization responds. Physical businesses, manufacturing businesses, services businesses, they aren't there yet in that thinking process. They're still responding when it happens. And so we have to think a lot more about how we plan scenarios in our organization. So we've done a lot of work with organizations who've implemented all of these concepts. And we can know the results that they've played on their performance. So my question is, I don't think I've told you anything new in terms of some of these ideas. But the reality is today, and this is what, with all my grey hair experience, or no hair experience, is we still don't do it. A few do, but we don't do it. When I went to speak to all of the analyst companies, hoping to find inspiration about companies who'd really changed their business and operating models, the analyst community was depressed. Because they said, everybody says it, very, very few are doing it. They said, if you want to see real change, go and look at China. So we went to look at China. And we started to uncover these organizations, right, that were really doing interesting stuff. It's a small number of organizations in every sector. So some are doing it, but a lot of us aren't doing it. And the question is, why? Why aren't we driving with intensity to make that difference, to create that future? Because that's what we have to do. We have this fantastic opportunity to change things, and we have all these change drivers that give us a reason to do it. But we have to become more focused. We have to drive and accelerate at a faster pace, because these leaders are 4 years ahead. They are delivering double the amount of results. Their business agility is twice as agile as yours. And if you think about it, if you invest in business agility, you start to drive that change and that digitization faster. What does that do? That drives more agility, which means your agility gets faster, which means you start to drive more change. It's a circle that reinforces itself. So we have to move faster. So hopefully I've given you some ideas to think about, some themes maybe to think about, and hopefully a thought for you to take away from the forest, as we've had our little Zen moment, as to what we need to do. So thank you very much.